in Uganda and lots of other parts of Africa is this thing called mob justice. Rather than calling in the police if something happens, they will sort it out amongst themselves. And his own dad, who had chopped his arm off with a machete because, he'd been caught stealing.
Did you have any close calls at all?
About 3 days later, 7 park rangers were killed in that village by militia group. And suddenly turned around, pointed a handgun straight at my chest and at my guide's chest and just waved it between us. Some people had ended up being killed, and next thing you know, it's countrywide civil unrest in Ethiopia.
Over a Man United Arsenal match?
Over a Premier League match. I don't even know if that made the news out here. Interrogated, had this near miss with an avalanche in Kazakhstan, got myself, stuck in this jungle, collared by some undercover police in China, like all kinds of crazy things. Ended up in a car with a drug runner in Kyrgyzstan. So from that moment forward, I was classed as an illegal drug trafficker in one of the world's strictest police states.
Ollie, welcome to the show, mate.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to this one. This is a different one for us.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique world that I'm in,
Absolutely.
that I find myself in. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Let's roll all the way back. Where did you grow up? And tell me about some of the mad countries you've been to and why.
Okay, well, grew up in a place very different to where I find myself a lot of the time now. So grew up in Wigan. Northern England, it's a traditionally sort of working class rugby league town. So grew up, on the outskirts of that town. Normal upbringing, really. Played a lot of sport, so got into football and rugby at an early age. Actually, we had a really good rugby team, so we got into the national final a couple of times. So age 13, playing at Millennium Stadium in the national final for schoolboys, it was, crazy experience at that age. But certainly the world of adventure and expeditions growing up was never even in my vocabulary. I did not know it existed. But if I think back to those early years, I think I had the traits that suited what I do now. I wanted to be outside. I was always that kid in the classroom, staring outside, wanting to be outside, wanting to be active. I was kind of sometimes the ringleader amongst my mates, getting up to no good or getting up to little schemes here and there. And that only really started to play out as I reached into my late teens and, like anyone at that age, started to ask themselves, right, what do I want to do in my life? And that was where it started to come together. So that's the background. That's the early days.
So what was the movement then? How old are you today?
32.
What was the movement then to get you to find out that you really want to go on to visit some crazy countries around the world?
I suppose it was progressive. So fast forward in a few years, age 17, went on a climbing weekend with some mates in the Lake District. Never done that before. And instantly that hit of adrenaline, being up high on a rock face, you're immersed in that. You've got, the adrenaline pumping. You are responsible for your own safety. It kind of ticked a lot of boxes for me. It was like an itch, which I never knew I had, but I wanted to scratch it instantly. And so that was really appealing right away. And so off the back of that, I know we were just talking about university, I actually signed up to a university degree course in outdoor leadership. I was thinking about different paths at that stage. So, military was a path potentially, or something in the outdoors, something unconventional. But I found out about this degree course, signed up to it. Did turn out to be a good experience. As far as degree courses go, we were out and about climbing mountains, mountain biking, rock climbing, kayaking, canoeing with some of the UK's best instructors. And then, of course, I was immersed in this world where you're surrounded by like-minded people doing that. And so every summer we were being encouraged to go off and have these sort of adventures and very quickly unfolded. So at the age of 19, I was out in Morocco, big 2-week expedition on my own with some local guides and porters and living in mud huts and learnt a bit of Arabic. Worked in America that summer, and the next year I wanted to push things a bit further. So, I was doing my research. I'd learnt a bit more Arabic actually, because geopolitically, that area was the Middle East, that was really heating up at that moment in time. It's not long after 9/11. I found myself reading a lot of the news. I was really interested in the topics that are happening out there, and wanted to go and kind of see it for myself. So this is age 20. I'm going through university, ordinary guy, but I really want to get out into the world. And so age 20, I go out to Beirut in Lebanon for a month on my own. It's not a normal thing to do. I didn't know anybody out there. Didn't know anybody who'd been there. Had no connections. But I went out there. I managed to link up with a local family. Stayed with a local family in the summer. They hosted me, and they were really very generous family. They fully invited me into their world. Lebanon, for a bit of background for people, basically for the last 30, 40 years, on and off, it's been filled with civil wars, lots and lots of fighting, lots of political unrest, lots of different clans and influences and religious sort of issues in the country. But sort of above all that, you've also got like amazing nightlife. You've got nightclubs. You've got beach clubs.
Yeah, I've heard.
Yeah,
I was just about to say that. I was like, I've heard Beirut's the place to go and party.
Yeah, I tell you what.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think it, would you? If you said to me, Dodge, you fancy kind of Beirut for the weekend, I'd be like, leave it out. I'm not going to Beirut. Yeah. But actually, a pal said it to me about a year ago, and I had a little look. I was like, I need to go to that place.
It's phenomenal, actually, and I kind of had access to that. So one of my friends that I made out there, quite well connected, and then I'm then able to go into these nightclubs and beach clubs, and we're going up and staying in the mountains. But at the same time as all this is going on, like normal life, I suppose, then a mile away from where I was staying, a petrol station was blown up. Across the street from me, I remember watching a sniper on a rooftop. Walking along the street at night, there was guys sort of dealing handguns or doing whatever they were doing in the back of this SUV, and so it's just like, what kind of a world am I in? But for a normal lad from a normal background, seeing all this and then the thrill of it, it was just addictive right from the start. And then I could go back and tell my mates, well, so this is what I've been doing this summer, and it kind of unfolded from there. The seed was planted by that point.
Wow, how exciting is that?
Yeah,
a lad from Wigan. I want to know, firstly, why did you choose Beirut? Where did that come from? You're not just go on the internet and go, I fancy that, or throw a dart at the map and go, I'll have a bit of Beirut.
Where did that come from? I did do a bit of research. I wanted somewhere that was slightly tasty, I suppose. And it had just come out, at that time when I went there, it had just come out of a period of unrest. I was looking at going to Syria, actually. But that was the year of the Arab Spring all kicked off. And I had plans. I had a guidebook for Syria. I'd started to do some planning. But, that was quickly off the cards when the Arab Spring kicked off. And so
the Arab Spring, what's that?
Okay, so the Arab Spring, back in I forget, it's 2010 or 2011, I think 2011, essentially across the Arab world, you had a lot of political unrest kicking off very quickly. So it was lots of people within these countries, which are typically dictatorships. So Syria is a prime example. Tunisia was another one. Then expanded to Libya, then expanded to Egypt, various other pockets of the Middle East. And it was essentially people uprising against the dictatorships, their governments. So it was like a revolution which was unfolding across the Middle East. And that quickly consumed Syria, which then led to a decade of civil war, brutal civil war in Syria, with lots of factions, terrorist groups popping up.
So why are you thinking Syria? So surely someone at the age of 20 would be thinking, well, Ibiza, a bit of Mallorca, let's go to America, let's go da-da-da.
To be fair, I did a bit of that as well.
You've done that as well?
Yeah.
Good. Get out of your system.
Got out of that system, but it wasn't enough. And actually, sometimes, trip to Magaluf is a bit more sketchy than a trip to Syria. It's going to be said.
It's probably more dangerous as well, isn't it? That Magaluf strip, 3 a.m. Jesus.
100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, it intrigued me the more I looked into it. And I wanted to go somewhere different. I didn't know anyone who'd been there. And I think, I wanted to start to create my mark on the world, or not in a big way, but in a personal way. It's like, what am I going to do to make myself unique, to make myself stand out? I don't know if I'll be applying for jobs in the future or something, but this really is something unique. To go here, to live out in the Middle East at the age of 20, 19, have these experiences. So that it was just that I wanted to push things right from the start.
And I bet that feeling landing back, seeing all your mates, I'm not saying your mates are working in a boozer or working in a petrol station or estate agents where you're coming back with a load of stories. When you're coming back, you're probably going, what you guys you been up to? I've been to Boozer on the weekend. I've done this, not much really. You're coming back with this like book of stories. Is that the little buzz that you want to have in your locker? Every time you go to a country, you want to come back with a load of stories?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I mean, there's been, I'm sure we'll get into it, but there's been a lot of crazy situations over the years. And whenever those unfold, part of me is thinking, oh, not this again. But the other part of me is thinking, when I get back, this is going to be a cracking story. So I can see both sides.
Where did you go? Where did you go after then? When you come back, that was your first trip. Give me another country that you went to that you were like, Jesus, that was a hairy moment there. Yeah,
the next summer I was, so the way I was, just a little bit of extra backstory on this, the way I was kind of funding these trips at my university, they had this travel bursary scheme, and I devoted a lot of time to figuring out exactly how I could get money out of the university to fund these travels. And so year after year, I was the only student in 35,000 students at university who got it 3 consecutive years. They were fed up with me, my applications.
I'll just give him some more wage. Yeah.
But I learned the system.
How much did they give you, roughly?
Each trip was anywhere between $1,000 and $2,000, something like that. So, it's enough to fund the trip.
Yeah.
I was living cheaply out there. So the next summer I was off to Uganda. Day one, day one, it's just that in itself has had its turmoil. Day one, I was picked up at the airport by an ex-Uganda military general. It was like just one thing unfolded to the next, and driven to this compound on the outside of the city. In this all beat up ex-British military Land Rover. He's got an AK-47 lying over his lap, takes me into the boozer with his mates. And next thing you know, we're partying into the early hours in Uganda. And I'm just thinking, wow, what is this world?
Yeah.
And then, it's just spent a month there seeing gorillas and safarying and doing a bit of voluntary work in a school. But it was, just that thrill of it. And, you're not going to get these, or maybe you can in certain walks of life, but rarely going to get these experiences in the UK. Yeah. And so every year, while I was through university at least, it was always a case of, right, what's next? Where's next? How can I find the next
Were you trying
to
push boundaries the whole time?
Yeah.
Were you thinking, right, hold on a minute, I'll fancy a bit of Uganda because I heard that's madness out there. I want to go to that country because that's mad. Is that what's going through your head?
In a way, because it was addictive, that thrill of it. And then the thing that makes it addictive partly is you come back to normality and suddenly everything feels a little bit flat in a way. You're used to, or you get used to this really high octane, intense environment where you basically, you never know what's around the next corner. You never know who you're going to meet, what's going to happen. And then you're coming back to normal life. And, suddenly everything feels a little bit slow. It's kind of hard to readjust. So the thing I've always done, and it's kind of continued for the last 14, 15 years, is just continue to seek out these experiences. And for sure, like I look back at some of the early years and I was taking risks sometimes that I wouldn't take now, and probably a bit naive in certain of the, some of the encounters and situations, but that's all part of the learning curve.
I want to know what goes through your head when you're at home in Wigan with your laptop open going, I fancy a bit of Uganda. What goes through your head about booking accommodation? What goes through your head about, and is it an open ticket, or are you saying, right, I want a month in Uganda? Where am I going to get my food from? Where am I going to transport from? Are you completely planning every day, or are you just going with the flow?
In those early days, really going with the flow. Okay. Like it was a bare bones of a plan, to be quite honest. So, that one I'd found out about this place in rural Uganda. So the main thing was actually volunteering at the school. I didn't expect to be picked up by this army general, guns and booze and parties and everything on day one. Yeah. So that was unexpected. But I built it around that. And then you think, you do a bit more research. You can go and trek with gorillas. There's some volcanoes you can climb there. There's this interesting tribe you could go and meet. And then you get out there. And actually, I think sometimes if you overplan it, you reduce the opportunities. Yeah. So part of the magic for me has always been being out there and actually just seeing what unfolds, And if your freedom, if you keep your plans free, then you are able to say yes to opportunities, and that's what I really buzz off, these, and that's when the best things happen. Yeah. When
off the cuff.
Off the cuff, impromptu experiences. Yeah, 100%.
Did you ever feel in threat out there in Uganda? Being a white lad, there can't be many white lads out there, right?
No, not at that time. And we were in a very rural area of Uganda. There's
Yeah.
very few foreigners out there. I think one of the first things you need to get used to is lots of people wandering about with machetes and things that you would consider serious weapons over here. And so, I'd be out on a morning run or out and about in the village or something, and there's guys walking around with machetes, and your instinct is like, whoa, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
But you learn that that's just normal life out there.
Yeah.
I remember there was a guy, just to give you a bit of extra context into like how things work out there. And this is what I learned while I was out there, is there was a guy who was also at this school, and he had half his arm missing. And, got to know him a little bit, and then sort of asked the question, what happened to your arm? And he at some point he said he'd been stealing in the village, and sort of the village had heard about it. And what you get in Uganda and lots of other parts of Africa is this thing called mob justice. So essentially, rather than calling in the police if something happens, they will sort it out amongst themselves and basically, dole out the punishment that they see fit. And so that's what had happened. And it was actually his own dad who had chopped his arm off with a machete because he'd been caught stealing. And so
God.
that is, that's the sort of thing that can unfold in these places. He'd probably got off lightly. There's other people who wouldn't get off so lightly. But
tell me about the gorillas.
Yeah.
What's it like? Is it just wild gorillas running around?
Yeah, so these are mountain gorillas. There's only 1,000 left in the world, so they're very endangered. They're in 3 countries, Uganda, Rwanda, Congo, and they live deep in the rainforest, primary rainforest. So what you can do is head out with local rangers. Again, they're fully armed up to the teeth, and go out and visit these gorillas. You get an hour with them. And I mean, the silverbacks, they must be 500-600 kilograms. Their heads like watermelons.
500-600 kilograms.
Yeah, they are monsters. Absolutely, you cannot believe how big they are. Did you
touch?
No, but you can get within
close,
about 2-3 meters, so really close. Yeah. I did it in the Congo as well, actually, which is a whole nother story. Yeah, so I've seen the gorillas in Uganda and the Congo. Congo's just over the border, and I mean, you think Uganda's something, Congo is whole nother level. This was a few years later. But
what's the difference between Congo and Uganda? Okay,
so Congo has had more casualties than any war since World War II. So it is, for the last 15, 20 years, maybe 30 years now, it's basically been filled with civil wars. So the entire country, or much of the country, is littered with militia groups, warring militia groups, who are trying to steal territory. There's a lot of wealth, mineral wealth in Congo. So that's a lot of the problem. So these militia groups trying to control the mines in Congo. So you've got mines like coltan, which is a very precious metal. About 90% of it's found in Congo. That goes into everybody's mobile phones. So right now, very high demand. But you've got these warring militias who are all trying to get control of these mines. So going into the Congo, I mean, so you need armed escorts, first of all, wherever you go. So I was taking a group. This was, fast forward in a few years. But I was leading a group out there, and a group of 16 travelers from all over the world. I was guiding our aim was to go and find these mountain gorillas. We had organized armed guards, essentially, to escort us. And once you get out of the city of Goma, so this is in Virunga National Park in Eastern Congo, you got the city of Goma, crazy city in itself, big active volcano sits over it, which erupts every 10 years or so, destroys the city, and then they rebuild it. But as soon as you get out of the city, it is just complete bandit country. And I mean, you're driving along, you're seeing young teenagers with Kalashnikovs, you see people hiding out in the forests, with guns. And you don't know who is Congolese army, who's militia groups, what their intentions are. So that is, possibly one of the sketchiest places I've ever been to, where it feels like anything could kick off at any moment in a big way. And it does very often. So you're really threading the needle to go there.
Did you have any close calls at all?
In a way. So we, on that trek, we were in various different Land Cruisers, so split the team up into various different Land Cruisers. We had, which are big sort of Toyota SUVs. We had armed guards on motorbikes. It's crazy. It's like something out of a film. And you're driving through rural Congo. You've got guys with guns. You've got jungle all around you, big volcanoes, steaming and smoking away in the background. And we're off to see the gorillas. So this is really sort of cutting edge adventure. And at a certain point, all of the SUVs split up, and we were going to visit different families of gorillas. We went way up north, our particular truck. Bear in mind, I was leading this team. I was sort of responsible for them. We split up. We went far off north and into this certain area. And as we were signing in at the rangers station there, we noticed we were the first tourists there in about 8 months. So, nobody's really going there. And we had an older guy with us. And it's quite a tough trek, to get in through this primary rainforest. It's not like there's paths and trails. You're literally hacking through the rainforest to try and find these gorillas. It can take several hours. This thunderstorm kicked off. This older guy had a trip, bashed his knee up, and now he's struggling to walk. And then we did see the gorillas, amazing experience, headed back out, and he's kind of hobbling away. Time is ticking on, and nightfall is closing in. As we got back to the truck, and our guard, he said, look, like, there's no way we're driving back at night. It's just far too dangerous to drive at night. That's when a lot of the activity is happening. The bandits are coming out, carjackings, all the rest of it. So it's like, driving back to the city, it's a 4-hour drive on terrible roads. It's not going to happen. So we had to come up with a plan B, and that was staying in the local village there, tiny little local village, which had just a couple of months before that had experienced big attacks, but we literally had no choice. So we found a place to stay. Weren't even allowed to go out and get food or water. So, this was unplanned. So we're just sharing amongst ourselves these little snacks. And we did manage to get out the next day. But about 3 days later, 7 park rangers were killed in that village by a militia group. No. So, that felt very close to the bone. Potentially some of those rangers were the ones working with us. We never got the details on it, but that was a bit of a shock to the system. And actually, that was the first time I'd led an adult expedition. Yeah. So it was really like straight into the deep end. Again, there's more backstory, put me in a position to do that. But that was straight into the deep end. And these are the sorts of things that can potentially happen when you're really pushing the limits.
When you say you stayed in a village, explain to me what a village looks like.
Very basic. So, on the sort of outskirts of the village, you've got basically huts made out of mud and sticks and banana leaves. The place we were staying in, it was like a concrete building with some sort of secure walls around it. So at least we felt relatively secure. And there were a couple of basic huts with sort of metal tin roofs but very, very primitive. Dirt roads everywhere, fires lit in the street, heaps of rubbish, people wandering about, and very, very basic.
And it's mad, isn't it? So you're saying like kids walking around, 10, 11-year-olds walking around machine guns and stuff. How do you know who's who? Like, do they know who's who? Is it a different accent? Are they wearing different clothes, or is it just everyone free for all?
They will, but we don't really. And even the park rangers and the armed guards, maybe they spend a lot of time there, but us as sort of outsiders who are seeing it for the first time is very, very hard to distinguish, because they're not in like particular uniforms or anything. They're literally people who've at some stage, especially the kids, probably been dragged out of a village and forced to join these militia groups. That's kind of how it works there.
What was that movie?
Blood Diamond.
Blood Diamond. Yeah, what country was that?
That was in Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone, that's right.
Yeah.
So I'm visualising that now.
I mean, it's not far off what Congo looked like when I was there.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your next movement after that? What was another country that you've been to?
Yeah, so one of the next ones I went to was Iraq. So round about this time. I mean, there's kind of a lot more before that, actually. But one of the next ones, so at this stage, I'd cut my teeth. I'd done a lot of solo travel, so like some big solo experiences all over the world, and again, lots of crazy stuff that I got up to. But then I started to get into this world of guiding teams, guiding expeditions, and so I've met a guy who runs expeditions out to these weird and wonderful places, and so Iraq was basically the next sort of job that I was offered, and I'd never been to Iraq. You think Iraq, you think sort of destroyed buildings, bombings, terrorists. That's what you see in the news, 100%. And so but I was intrigued because I'd sort of set this path, and I'd heard about some people going there. I thought, okay, let's give it a go. And I wanted to, I suppose, take things to the next level still. So I thought, how can I make this more interesting going to Iraq? So I did a bit of research, and I'm a keen mountaineer, so I do a lot of rock climbing, mountaineering. So I thought maybe I could go and climb the highest mountain in Iraq. That was my plan. And so I did a bit of research. I thought I'll go out, guide the team around Iraq, northern Iraq, and then add on a trek to go and climb highest mountain in the country. And so that's what I did. And, you know, it's a crazy feeling to be flying in there. You're flying into northern Iraq. You know, you're looking down on this scene here, and it seems familiar because it's what you've seen in the news for so many years. But actually, after that initial few days of what the hell am I doing here, you start to relax into it a little bit. And actually, you know, it turned out I found it an extremely friendly, hospitable country, which really surprises a lot of people.
That's lovely to hear.
Yeah. Seriously. And this is what I've found in so many places. They are some of the friendliest, most hospitable countries I've ever visited. And I mean people inviting you into their houses, sharing drinks with you, you know, bringing you extra food, wanting selfies with you, wanting to show you around their village, things like this. So this is happening constantly. And I think partly that's local people trying to dispel this myth that they think you have, which I believe is true. So the thing that media never reports on is, you know, there's people out there getting married, of course, building businesses, raising children, living ordinary lives. But that's the thing that we don't see. So I do feel, you know, having been there, I have a responsibility to just spread that word a little bit.
That's really nice to hear, by the way.
Yeah.
Because you do, whatever is shown in the news, whatever, people just think, oh, it's war, people are fighting, buildings being bombed. And there's obviously millions of people living a nice life and doing good for themselves, which you never hear about.
No,
ever.
You don't hear about it.
Until we get people like you, Ollie, telling us.
Well, you know, no, I feel like I need to, because there's not many people going there. And having seen it and spent, you know, many months of my life in these countries, if not years, you know, I've met people, I've had conversations, I've been to people's houses, I've shared meals, you know, they've helped me out of lots of sticky situations as well. So I feel like I do have that responsibility to just tell people it's not what you think. And, you know, the media is only ever going to tell you the bad stuff in reality.
And why did you choose Iraq?
So that one was offered to me. That one was offered to me as a potential job to go and guide. And so I thought that's going to be interesting. And you know, I did my own research and felt that it was safe enough to go and do. So a bit of additional sort of background. We were in northern Iraq, so it's known as the Kurdish part of Iraq. It is known to be a little bit safer. So you have got sort of UK and American interests up there in that region. You've got a bit of an overseas presence in that area, but there are still potential issues. You know, we were there just around the time that the ISIS was still going, you know, fighting.
So roughly
in Iraq.
what year was this?
First time I went there was 2018.
18, okay.
2018, yeah, so 5 years ago now. Been back a few times since. But yeah, to come back to my original story, I was going to climb the highest mountain in Iraq at the end of this trip. So led the trip, all gone, you know, smoothly, seeing the group off, and then I was out there on my own. And so the highest mountain in Iraq, it's based up near the Iranian border. Very hard to get to, politically sensitive region. You need to go through a lot of checkpoints to get there. And the other few things, this mountain, around the base of it, you've got minefields, quite a lot of minefields, which were left by Saddam Hussein in the 80s. You've also got in that region some militia groups who are fighting against, some of them fighting against the Iraqi government. So it's quite a tense, dynamic region where there's lots of different things going on. So I knew I couldn't go there without, you know, really making a robust plan. And I managed to find who turned out to be the best mountain guide in the country. He was living in this particular village. He helped me get in through these checkpoints, made it to this village. And yeah, we went off and climbed this big snowy mountain, sort of a 3,500 meter, quite serious mountain.
Yeah. Made
it to the top, actually skied back down. And I mean, actually, in the week I was there, two local people were killed in that valley by landmines. So what some people do is go into the minefields because there's very little income in the region. Some of them will be picking wildflowers and fruits and things to sell at market. And some of them would actually be going out actively looking for mines, digging them up, trying to do it carefully, and then opening them up and selling the lead within them, because they can get about $10 for the lead within them.
Jeez.
And that, that's what they're doing for cash. And so one of those people was killed in the week I was there. Drove past the funeral, and so that brought it home again. But then the evening I got back into town, I met the guy who'd driven me out there. He'd come out. We were going to have pizza in the town, stay the night in the village, and then head back to the capital. I was going to fly out of there. And we were walking along a street, and there was a guy walking along in front of us with this strange kind of swagger, walking in the same direction, a few meters in front of us. Didn't think too much of it. Dark, nighttime, no lights on the street. And suddenly turned around, pointed a handgun straight at my chest and at my guide's chest and just waved it between us. And it was so random, so out of the blue. We could never, you can't anticipate something like that just happening in the instant. We were too far away to do anything, and there was certainly nowhere to hide. So it was just this standoff. It felt like minutes, but it was probably seconds, where we're just staring at this thing, frozen to the spot. It's happened so suddenly. And we looked him up and down, looked into his eyes, and eventually he just kind of laughed and tucked it back into his trousers and walked away. And I think, he's just mad, or, there's certainly something not quite right there.
He wasn't asking for money or anything?
He wasn't asking for money. He was just, it was just a completely freak incident.
Wow.
But just there's another little story there, which just to talk about some of the crazy things or the weird and wonderful things that can happen. So the day after that, I'd been driven back to the city, and my driver, him and I were having some food in this restaurant. He was going to drop me at the airport afterwards. We were reflecting on the trip, all that, eating some food. He got a phone call, and he's kind of answering this phone call, looking at me up and down and kind of smiling a little bit. And he gets off the phone and said, "Go on, what was that then?" And he said, I've got some friends who are in the media industry, and they know I work with foreigners, and so we're looking for a white guy to play the lead role in a commercial for chickpeas. So I'm like, right. He said, "So do you want to meet them?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Go on then. Let's see what happens." Yeah. And so they came round about 20 minutes later, and they started to pitch this idea. And they said, it's Iraq's biggest chickpea brand, and we want to run a series of adverts, and we want a sort of a Westerner to appear in it as the lead role. And they said, so what it would be, it's a series of adverts. First advert, you're walking around a market, browsing these chickpeas, you have a taste, and you're like, like, okay, I can do that. And then a couple of episodes later, you're hosting a dinner party, you're handing out the chickpeas, and all your guests are loving it. And anyway, next thing I know, I'm in this skyscraper in Iraq being auditioned for the lead role in a chickpea. Yeah, literally. I couldn't believe this thing unfolding. And they sent it off to the producers, and actually they wanted me, but by the time they wanted me, I was already on the flight back home. So anyway, it didn't happen, but I was, this is just some of the random things that can happen.
So when you land back home, what then goes through your head? You're like, I need that buzz again. Get me out of Wigan. Get me to another mad country, or a country I've never been to. I need another adventure. Is that constantly going on in your head?
More or less. Yeah, more or less. So I really buzz off going to new places all the time. So, I want to be going to different places. And then because I'm traveling with lots of other well-traveled people and constantly making new connections and networks all over the place, you hear about places that I need to add this to my list. That sounds great. I want to go there. So it just unfolds, and the list gets bigger and bigger, all these things that you want to do. And the intensity of it just gets addictive. So, for a few years there, I'm going to 12, 15 countries a year. So it's, it's more or less back-to-back expeditions. It's Somalia one week, Yemen the next week, Syria. And the intensity of it is what gets addictive. Yeah.
Tell me your experience about Somalia, and what are the Somalians like?
Yeah, Somalia, again, I was guiding a group out there. So we'd just come in from northern Ethiopia, where again, we'd had some issues. So funnily enough, this big bit of civil unrest, I will come on to Somalia, but this big bit of civil unrest had just kicked off in Ethiopia. And, to explain what some of these things can kick off over, it was a football match, a Premier League football match, Arsenal versus United, the two biggest supported clubs in Ethiopia, as it turns out. Controversial thing had happened. It all kicked off in a bar. Some people had ended up being killed, and next thing you know, it's countrywide civil unrest in Ethiopia. And we were caught up in this.
Over a Man United Arsenal match.
Over a Premier League match.
Bloody
I don't
hell.
even know if that made the news out here, but this is what happened. And so next thing you know, we're driving along this road on a coach. We were going from place to place, doing a bit of trekking, and we were surrounded by this armed mob with machetes, with sticks, and had to sort of negotiate our way out of that one. And here, kind of first of all, having good local contacts really helped, and secondly, just really having me in particular having my finger on the pulse of what was happening and why was it happening in that country. So I knew that although it was a mob and you never know what might happen with a mob, I knew they wouldn't or shouldn't have an issue with us as outsiders. Like, we've got no skin in the game. So they saw that eventually and let us drive on. But yeah, then we made it into Somalia. Again, we were so it's from one place to the next.
Yeah.
But
and we're talking East Africa here, aren't we?
East Africa, yeah.
Okay.
So this is sometimes known. Somalia is known as the Horn of Africa. Yeah. Most famous over recent years for its piracy.
Yeah.
So any ships going through that area would have to be very, very careful about the risk of pirate attacks. It is mainly in sort of eastern and southern Somalia where a lot of the main issues were. We were in northern Somalia, which is known to be a little bit safer. But again, we did have armed guards. One of the issues, though, is everyone is completely off their head almost constantly on this thing called khat or chat, which is basically a leaf which you chew all day. It's quite a mild thing, but they end up really, really talkative, really exaggerated. And so, even our armed guard is on this stuff. Our driver is on this stuff. Yeah. So, how reliable they would actually be if something was to happen.
What is it like getting stoned? Is it a relaxed vibe?
Yeah, probably more like getting stoned.
Okay.
Yeah, but maybe a little bit weaker. But they're just chewing this stuff all the time, basically. And so they're kind of on their own planet. But anyway, it turned out to be a relatively straightforward trip, that one. One of the quirky things we did do a little boat journey off to see some of the abandoned ships off the shore. So probably one of the few groups who's done a boat trip in Somalia, in potentially pirate infested waters. But that one turned out to be okay, actually. Isn't
it mad? Like, we had a load of SAS and SBS special forces on here, and the days when the ships, like the SAS when they left, or the SBS when they left the special forces, were put onto the ships to protect the ships because Somalian pirates were going on there with machine guns. There was God knows how many, 2 or 3 years where the lads on the boats, on the ships, weren't allowed machine guns.
Yeah.
They were fighting them off with their hands and throwing stuff at them or whatever they're doing, while the Somalians are jumping on the back of the ships and taking everyone hostage.
Wow.
How mad is that?
It is crazy. I mean, that's a whole new level, really.
Yeah.
And we weren't, certainly, like, the dynamic is very different for us as, essentially tourist groups or traveling groups. We're not there to fight people off and things like that. And if you go into it with that mentality, you're going to get yourself in trouble. So what I always do, particularly guiding groups, is, and there's been incidents where, we've had confrontations, and there's been, people have had guns and machetes and different things. And there's been, I've had to negotiate our way out of it. And so for me, my go-to is always de-escalating the situation. Because of course, we're just unarmed, ordinary people. If you start to be aggressive and escalate the situation, it is not going to end well. You don't know who these people really are, what they've got, who they could bring in if they needed to. So for us, it is a different dynamic. But actually, that helps sometimes. The fact that we're not armed, we're not there, in any sort of military capacity. I think people give us generally like an easier time.
How would you react if someone confronted you? Are you very like hands in the air? I'm just a adventurer. I'm just here on holiday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, is that how you would be?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's diffusing the situation. Yeah. And I think one of, you never like to talk about what you're good at or bad at, but something I have honed over the years is staying very, very calm and very relaxed. So I will just try and bring that temperature right down, speak to them.
That's a superpower, by the way. staying calm in tough situations.
Yeah,
whether it's business, whether it's adventures, whatever.
It's proved useful, definitely, and that has got me out of a lot of situations where, yeah, if I was to react aggressively and try and fight back, like you're a stranger in foreign lands, potentially hostile areas. You do not want to be aggressive to raise the stakes, raise the temperature of that situation. So for me, it would always be, okay, how can I relax this person? How can I communicate with them on a human level? Try and find some common ground, try and show them that we're not a threat. And usually it only takes a minute or two to sort of talk them round, to calm them down. 9 times out of 10, that works.
Have you ever been anywhere where there's a language barrier, or do most people speak English?
Oh, the majority of places I go to, there's a language barrier.
Huge language barrier.
Yeah.
So how are you communicating with someone who can't understand what you're trying to say? Body language.
Yeah, body language. It's amazing. It really surprises people, but you can communicate quite well with people who don't speak the same language as you. Sounds crazy to say it, but you really can. And that is, showing your body language, trying to point and explain what you're trying to do there, or, finding some common ground that you can talk about. Maybe they've got some food in their hand and you can have a laugh about it. And you can make people laugh, you can share a joke even without sharing the same language. Sometimes we will have local guides and things who will be able to interpret for us. But yeah, it doesn't always, I think what I always try and do is just find that human level, because I just have this real sense that, they're no different to how I am. They've got their own worries and stresses, and same as me, and they've got, their own relationships, their own things going on. We're both just human beings, and I try and interact with them on that human level. And I think that works, just finding common ground, essentially.
I see a ring on your finger.
Yeah.
Married.
I am.
How supportive is your wife for you going off and doing all these ventures?
Well, yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, incredibly supportive. We've been together, we've been married for 7 years. And so right from the start, I've been doing this my whole adult life. She knew what she was getting herself into. And we had, I'm always very, very open in life in general, and sort of what my goals are, what I want to do. And so right from the start of our relationship, I was very open about, this is what I want to do, this is who I am. And she understood it. I made a lot of sacrifices for her to help her with her career and things over the years. But yeah, she's very supportive, and I do consider we're a really good team. I think a lot of that comes from the fact I've done this for a number of years now, and I've got a good sense of risk and how far I'm willing to push things. And so she trusts me. She trusts my decision making. Often I will run scenarios through with her. So, I will, if I'm going off to some destination, maybe she'd even question, my wife Emma would even question me on what you're going to do if this happens, or what you're going to do if this happens. And if I can't answer it with really solid, questions, then it's time for me to go and have a rethink. Yeah. But I always want to get to that point where especially now guiding groups, I am 100% just covering every eventuality.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And you're 31 today?
32.
32. Yeah. And have you thought about kids?
We've got 2 kids.
You've got 2 kids as well, and you're off track. Fuck, fair play, fair play to Emma if you're listening.
yeah. I'll play that one on repeat.
Get you some brownie points here, Ollie.
Yes.
So tell me, give me another country you've been to. You've been to 70 countries, right? What is there? 195 countries in the world.
Yeah, 195.
195 in the world. You've done 70 of them.
75 now.
75. Yeah. Wow. Pick another country for me.
Okay, I'm going to rewind a little bit so this is always a good story to share, if you want a good story. So I'd finished uni, got out of university, went overseas for a year, traveling about, working in different places all over Australia, Asia, back to the UK, ended up in this job I hated. So for a couple of years there, I was in this corporate world. I was actually working for a kitchen manufacturer trying to sell kitchens, hated every minute of it, but it had all these things like salary, car, bonus scheme, all the rest of it. And I was being kind of sucked into this line of work. But I mean, the person I was then is unrecognizable from who I was now. Like, I would lounge around. I felt demotivated. I just felt this sort of passion just slipping away. But it got to the point where I thought, I need to get myself out of this. And so with all of these things going on, at that time I was due to get married, just taken on a house, was starting a house renovation, decided to quit the job, and really make a go for it with this life of adventure and expeditions. And the thing I came up with was doing a big solo trip from Hong Kong to Istanbul. So that's essentially the full length of Asia on my own in the middle of winter. Was traveling by any means, but
so you were flying in. You flew into Hong Kong, and you want to work your way back.
Yeah, all the way back to Istanbul.
Wow!
Right the way across the middle of Asia in the middle of winter on my own, and climb mountains in every country.
Is that right?
So that was the plan.
How many countries in total was that?
I went through 11 countries on that trip. All traveling overland, and so I could speak for ages on that. But to come to one particular story, been traveling about 2.5 months by this stage, already been through China and Tibet. I've been interrogated, had this near miss with an avalanche in Kazakhstan, in Laos, got myself, stuck in this jungle. Got collared by some undercover police in China, like all kinds of crazy things. Ended up in a car with a drug runner in Kyrgyzstan. I could go on and on, but
keep going.
Well, I will. I'll come to the best story yet. Yeah. So anyway, got into Tajikistan.
Where's that?
Tajikistan is in Central Asia. So Central Asia is this band of 5 countries, south of Russia. And so they're all once part of the Soviet Union. So there's a big Russian influence there. So you got Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, 5 countries, Central Asia, all with their own.
All part of Asia, those countries.
All part of Asia.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd never guessed that.
Yeah, all part of, and it's an area which people tend not to know much about. It's sort of forgotten about. But each of those countries has got its own unique flavor and personality in a way, and its own issues. And one of the things
it's on issues.
Its
own issues. Okay,
issues.
Yeah.
So one of the things was in that region. So it's just north of Afghanistan. So this was something I was learning as I was traveling through the region, which, there's a reason I'm going to tell you this. Afghanistan produces 95% of the world's heroin.
Yeah.
Much of which I found out goes up through this area of Central Asia into Russia, and then dispersed across Europe. So that tends to be what happens. So these countries are very, very hot on drugs gangs who are operating in that region. Yeah. So as I said, at one point found myself in. So even taxi drivers, things like that, ordinary guys, they'll be helping to shuttle this thing around, and I witnessed that firsthand. Just by some unusual coincidence, ended up in a taxi in Kyrgyzstan. Anyway, fast forward, Tajikistan is south of Kyrgyzstan. I was traveling through, and the next destination was Uzbekistan. So Uzbekistan was at that time, this is 2016, so 7 years ago, it was a really brutal dictatorship. So in terms of the freedom of its people, it was second only to North Korea. So that is the kind of level it's at. Wow. So a really, really...
Uzbekistan.
Okay. Yeah. So a really strict police state. So very heavy surveillance. Uzbek people will find it very difficult to leave the country. The place is on, pretty much locked down, and they're very limited, restricted on what they can do. And particularly as a tourist going there or a foreigner, you're going to be instantly of interest to the authorities. And so I'd heard stories as I was traveling through this region of just be careful once you get to Uzbekistan, because it's different to the other places. So I had this in my mind, and late at night or sort of in the evening, I was crossing over a land border from Tajikistan to Uzbekistan. So how these land borders work, you've got the the Tajik side. You'd then go through there, get stamped out of Tajikistan, walk over what's called no man's land, and then enter Uzbekistan to go in through the other side. So, and because of the political situation, there's really not many people going back and forth through this area. So it's pretty much just me, late in the evening, crossing this land border. And as I was leaving Tajikistan, he tried to extort me, tried to get some cash out of me, argued against that. I thought, okay, got away with it. Problem solved. Off into no man's land, across into the Uzbek side. Got my passport stamped. I thought, okay, no problem. It was actually a friendly greeting at first. I'm in. Like, what's the issue? And then he sent me through into this next room in the Uzbek side of the border crossing. And suddenly the atmosphere just changed. And so it was a big, sterile room. There were 3 guys in military uniforms. And they said, put your bag down. We want your phone, your laptop, your camera, any electronic equipment, hand it all over. So I was forced to hand that over. They started to go through the files on my laptop, pictures on my camera, opening up my phone, looking at whatever they wanted to see. At this point, what I can do about the situation is quite limited because I'm completely on my own in another country, being sort of just dealing directly with these military people at the border post. So, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'll just get on with it. I'll let them do what they've got to do. I have nothing to hide. And then, I'll be on my way. So full body search, full bag search, going through all this stuff. And they were starting to hand it back. I thought, okay, no issues. But the last thing they checked was my first aid kit. And in my first aid kit, I had cocodamol tablets. I had a bit of a knee injury at the time. And so I was taking these. They're, normal prescription drug here in the UK. Unbeknown to me, they're classed as an illegal narcotic in Uzbekistan because they contain trace amounts of opium within cocodamol. Oh. So from that moment forward, I was classed as an illegal drug trafficker in one of the world's strictest police states. And then, my whole world just felt like, oh shit, it came crashing down. And then next thing, I was led out to this border post at the border. And underwent a 4-hour interrogation. They speak very limited English, by the way, so there was a language barrier there. I was having mug shots taken. There were the tablets laid out in front of me. I was getting photos with these tablets, going through all this. They're interrogating me like, what have you got these for? Where are you going? Who are your contacts? And eventually, at the end of this 4-hour interrogation, they printed off these papers all in Russian. And said, okay, it's going to be much better for you if you sign these. And I'm looking at these things, I cannot understand them. No idea what I'd be signing. And I just said to them, look, there's no way I'm going to sign these papers. I have no idea what they say. And something clicked and I thought, right, what I want to do is speak to the British Embassy, try and see if they can help, and said, right, well, you're spending the night here and then tomorrow morning you can call them. So they put me in a cell overnight at the border post, got up the next morning. I'd flicked through my guidebook, found the British Embassy number, and they said, okay, you got one phone call, 3 minutes, here's the phone. And so dialed the British Embassy up, picked up the phone, and this was a Friday in late March 2016, and got this automatic voice message saying, hello, it's Good Friday, we'll be closed until the following Tuesday. Phone down, taken away, back to square one. And I've got no phone signal out here. They're very restrictive. So outside SIM cards and things wouldn't work. No Wi-Fi, basically no contact with the outside world. So I'm completely on my own, detained as this drug trafficker with no help from the embassy. And they want me to sign these papers, which I don't know. I have no idea what they say. So I'm like, right, how can I get myself out of this situation or improve my situation? And I said to them, first of all, I want an interpreter who can tell me exactly what this says. And they said, okay, well, we're going to have to drive down to the Afghan border. So fantastic.
Right.
Yeah. So they drove me down to this city called Termez, a couple of hours away. It was basically just me in this van with a load of military guys. They're, treating me like this high-value criminal. And got me down to the city, found me an interpreter. Then they went into this medical area. I had to give blood and urine samples to try and prove that this thing wasn't still in my system. Got an interpreter, got a lawyer, and they eventually, explained what the things said and said, okay, what it's come down to is you've got two choices. It's either 30 days in jail or a fine. You pay a fine, and I said, okay, what's the fine? And they said $1,000. And I wanted to negotiate the best position, so I actually managed to bring the fine down to $500. At first, so anybody thinking is this a bribe? Actually, it wasn't. So that ship had sailed. At the border post, I'd made a couple of suggestions, about doing that, but they weren't taking it on. These guys were really serious. So, as I'll come on to, this was, a proper fine through the courts and everything. So yeah, that was the option, but I didn't have the hard cash, the hard currency. I had a couple $100 or something. I thought, okay, I'll go and get the cash. And they said, no, you can't. In Uzbekistan, you can't use Visas or MasterCards. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I can't physically get my hands on the cash. They allowed me one more phone call. So I called my dad This is about 5 a.m. in the UK, Saturday morning. He's still in bed. And I said, right, I'm in a bit of a spot of trouble here. And basically explained the situation. And the only thing I could come up with was he could Western Union transfer some cash direct to a Western Union branch, which I'd seen on the street there. He managed to sort that. A few days later, managed to get my hands on the cash. In the meantime, I was held under house arrest at this dingy hotel, wasn't allowed to leave the hotel room. While I was there were people coming in the room, really serious, again, taking my phone off me, intimidating me, kind of harassing me. At one point, I did sneak out the hotel because I got fed up with them and wanted to try and get on some Wi-Fi somewhere, which I did manage to do. But yeah, eventually they said, okay, you've got the cash. But one of the funny things is as well, in Uzbekistan, the currency, the denomination is so small that when you convert $500 to Uzbek money is literally a bag full of cash. I had this carrier bag full of cash. And then they drove me out to what was an ex-KGB compound on the outskirts of the city. So there I am, bag full of cash, walking into an ex-KGB compound to pay my way out of prison. And so went in there, took them bloody ages to count all this money. And eventually gave my passport back and said, this guy you've been sort of hassling me for the past few days said, okay, you can go to the airport now and you can go home. But I was only halfway through this journey across Asia, this journey which I'd committed everything to, quit my job for. And so in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going home. That is not part of my plan. So what I'd done, I'd made friends with the interpreter by this point. He was the one person who I felt I could trust, because we had that, we spoke similar language, and he was talking about wanting to come to England. I'm like, I can, let's see what I can do. So anyway, I've made friends with him, and he was due to take me into the taxi to the airport. And then I was going to be seen off in the sort of government ties. But I said to him, look, I don't want to go to the airport. I want to carry on my journey. So I want to go up to the mountains. I'm going to go and climb a mountain in Uzbekistan and carry on from there. And he agreed. So got me into this taxi. Went up to the mountains, a few hours away. I thought, okay, first thing I need to do is contact home, give them an update. So walked around this town, no way of contacting home, no phone signal, no Wi-Fi, nothing like that. And so I couldn't update them. I knew they'd be worrying about me, thinking I'm banged up in some Uzbek jail. But I bumped into these local guys, sort of boxers, and they, had black eyes and gold teeth, really tough looking guys. But they were super friendly, and they sort of showed me around the town, and we went out. One of them owned a bar, so we started having a few drinks and things. And this felt like a sort of two fingers to the state in a way. It felt like a bit of a release day party. And but sure enough, an hour into this, there was a knock on the door, and policemen came in, dragged me outside, checked the passport and paperwork, and just said we've got eyes on you, basically. Couple of hours later, there was another policeman who got hold of us and basically sent us all back to the hotel. So I thought, okay, I'll just rein it in a little bit. I'll go back. I'll try and keep a low profile. Next day, climb a mountain. Spent a full day up there, 14 hours. Got back on my own, knackered, ready to go into my hotel room. And then I'm like, right, job done. As I got back to my hotel, I saw this same policeman who'd been hassling me the day before. I was in the shadows on the street just watching him. He pulled up to the hotel, walked along the front of the hotel, got to what I knew was my bedroom window, and was spying in through the bedroom window like this. So, at that point, the paranoia really started to kick in.
At that point, Jesus Christ, what about the other week, the week before that? I'll be off skis. Yeah. Get me back to London ASAP.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
mate, I'd have more of the fear, like they went, I'd take your phone if you take this, if you didn't. And then they showed the rubber glove. They go,
yeah. Fortunately, I was never treated to the rubber glove therapy. Just to clear on that, that didn't happen. But yeah, like this time, I mean, now everything with all this build-up, I was like, "Get me the hell out of here, man!" I am done with this country and feeling really paranoid. So after he left, got myself into the room, sort of hung a big blanket because it's just like thin net curtains over the window. Got a couple of hours rest, and then the next morning, 4 a.m., jumped in a taxi and basically changed taxis in every town across the country because I was so paranoid by that point. Managed to get onto an overnight sleeper train out into Kazakhstan, like a 36-hour journey or something, get myself out of the country. But yeah, it was, that was just a crazy experience.
So Uzbekistan. Then you went into Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
What's Kazakhstan? Do you know when I think Kazakhstan? Do you know what I think?
Yeah, I can guess. Our mate Borat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that nice?
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to bring that up at the border post. I can tell you that.
Didn't they get really upset? Didn't they get upset when Borat went out there and filmed? Then they saw the movie all about the country. There was a massive kickoff, wasn't there?
Yeah. He didn't film it there. I think he filmed it in Romania or somewhere like that. So he didn't film it there, but one of the things that did happen at some stage, because this film took off so much, was, it's terrible really, but there was some sort of Asian Games or something like that. And this Kazakh athlete was competing in it. I think it was somewhere in the Gulf states, like in Dubai or somewhere like that. And on the ceremony, as they stood up to get their medal, instead of the Kazakh national anthem playing, it was the theme tune of Borat, which is just, yeah.
What, so someone flicked the
Someone's
song?
Obviously done some browsing, picked the wrong thing, and then you've got the Borat theme tune.
That is genius.
It'll be out there on YouTube somewhere, but I mean...
I need to find that.
So, yeah.
Lads, we need to find that ASAP. I need to hear that. Yeah.
You don't want to reference that film when you're in Kazakhstan, I can tell you that. But actually, getting into Kazakhstan wasn't too easy, because at that point, I'd been traveling 3 months, got a big bushy beard, long hair. They thought I was on a fake passport. So I'm like, oh, for God's sake. So they interrogated me for ages, I had to show them pictures. And
did anyone ever think you're undercover old Bill, or undercover doing something, or you're a spy, or like you
yeah,
white lad, fresh face, English lad traveling around? You're standing like a sore thumb in all these countries.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's happened quite a lot, actually. So that's happened in multiple countries. So I've been interrogated in probably 10 different countries now. And, there's story or more for various different reasons.
Me and you need to go on the piss for the night. I want to hear all these stories.
There's so many.
An hour is not enough.
There's endless stories. But what can I give you as some of the best ones? So probably the most serious interrogation, one of the most serious ones, was coming back into Turkey, actually. So again, I've been in Iraq, and this was politically a really hot time. So the ISIS were fighting, and actually this part of Turkey, as I learnt, this was where a lot of the foreign fighters were flying into and then smuggling themselves over the border into Iraq and Syria to fight for ISIS, essentially.
Okay.
So the Turkish government are, really, really have a strong presence down there. So as you're driving along, you've got big armed trucks, you've got tanks, you've got soldiers everywhere in this little pocket of Turkey. Again, I've been back out in Iraq, guided another team out there, and we were crossing back overland into Turkey. And as we got across the border into the Turkish side, a bunch of us were pulled aside. So 4 of us were pulled aside, and later learned through some conversations that they were Turkish intelligence who'd pulled us to one side. They pulled us into an office, and this was a really serious interrogation. These guys were not messing about. So again, phones were taken from us. So they pulled in me. There was a guy who's from one of the Gulf countries. He's actually got some connections in the intelligence world. So that's probably why they've pulled him. There was a French journalist who was on our trip. So anyone who's a journalist, they're going to get interest. And so we were really, heavily interrogated there. What you're doing in this region, really having to prove ourselves. So this interrogation went on for a couple of hours. We did get out of that one. But it was interesting because a couple of days later, I was flying back into the UK. And this is a story I've probably not told on a podcast before, but I was flying back into the UK and landed in Manchester Airport. Okay, scan the passport. Seemed to be taking a little bit longer than usual. Didn't think too much of it. Doors opened, gates opened, and went off to get my bags. And just as I was approaching the the sliding doors to go and get my bag, there was a guy stood there in a suit, and he just said, "Mr. France, can I have a word with you?" I'm like, okay. And it turned out he was from MI5, and they were interested in what I was doing out there. And so then I was questioned by MI5. So yeah, these things happen, but I didn't have anything to hide. So I was as interested as he was as to why they wanted to speak to me. Yeah, I didn't have anything to hide.
Or why you got clobbered? Because when you do go through passport control, like you say, it takes a bit longer. You're like, oh mate, what they're looking at, what they're looking at, and then you get through. But you also know there's undercover there in suits. Yeah. Every airport you go to, which is great.
Yeah, I mean they've got a job to do, haven't they? But what they would have done, again, like I made some contacts after this who sort of gave me some background on why they're doing this. So they are essentially profiling people, and they would have figured out through various algorithms, through flight data, where I've come from, where I've traveled from, and they would have probably looked at me, profiled me, and maybe thought, has he potentially, is he ex-military, something like that? Could he have been joining some fighting, group who are fighting against terrorists in Iraq, something like that? So that probably would have been their logic. But, I did have everything there I needed to show that I was guiding a group out there. But some of these things do happen.
What an adventure.
Yeah.
What an eventful life so far.
Yes.
What about moving forwards then? Is your wife still fully supportive of you? For you to go away to do another month or 2 months away from the kids and Emma, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Emma, yeah. So since having kids, definitely.
How old are the kids?
One is 2 and one is almost 1.
Okay.
So almost 3 and almost 1. So still very little. And I think, anyone who's had kids, it does, whatever you're doing, it changes your perspective of risk a little bit. Yeah. So in terms of the risks I'm willing to take, I've probably reined it in slightly. But, that said, I'm just now embarking on a massive global expedition project called the Ultimate 7 Project. This is all 7 continents, basically world first project, which I'm just about to launch into, or just have launched into. But this is sort of, what I'm focusing my career on and building my career off the back of this. So now I feel like what I do needs to have more purpose, and it needs to be, I suppose, not just pure indulgence. It's, especially if I am taking risks there, it's a bit harder to justify. So I'm now going for more quality over quantity. So it's not quite as many countries, but still a lot of big crazy expeditions.
Have you ever thought about, you want to hit a number, say, there's 195 countries, I want to hit a certain number before I'm brown bread, to go, right, I want a ton 50, or is there a number in your mind?
I mean, I'd love to see them all. I'd love to see them all. Yeah. I mean, most of these countries have come in the last 10 years. Probably 50 or more of them. So I don't see why, what is there, another 120 left? Don't see why I couldn't do them all. Some of them, are going to be more interesting than others, but the good news is I've done a lot of the hard ones. Yeah. So I've got a lot of the nice ones left.
Ollie, I've really, really enjoyed this episode.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, mate. What an eventful life you've lived.
Well, yeah.
And I think there's shed load more to come, isn't there?
There's a lot more. Yeah.
Where can people find you?
So come and find me on Instagram at Oli_France. And I do, for anyone who is maybe got their appetite whet for a bit of an adventure, come and hook me up. I do run lots of expeditions, so you can find me on there and follow my expeditions on there.
Mate, I love your mindset.
Thanks, mate.
You've got a brilliant mind. You've got an open mind. There's not many people with that growth mindset of going, bring it on. Let me go on an adventure. Let me try that. I'll try this. I'll try that. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that from? Is it mum and dad or just yourself?
I think probably a lot, a lot of what I've done has fed into it. So it's, for me, I've sort of noticed a correlation, which is whenever you have an open mind, that's when the good stuff starts to happen.
Absolutely.
If you have a closed mind, goodbye opportunities. You're going to miss everything.
Boring.
So all the best things happen when you open your mind.
Agree.
I've found that all over the world.
Ollie, it's been a pleasure, mate.
Loved it.
Thank you so much for coming all the way down from Wigan.
My pleasure. Yeah, Thank you for having me on.
You're
a great conversation.
You're a good man.
Thanks
Cheers,
very much.
Ollie.
Cheers, Dodge.
Mate, that was wicked. That is really good.
Oh yeah, good stuff.
Is really good. Yeah, good. Mate.
Glad to hear it, mate.
It's good content there.
Got through a load of countries.
Yeah, mate. But it was such. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I mean, it
flew by, didn't it? That was 67 minutes.
Yeah, hour and 7 minutes.
All right, cool.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think I've picked out some of the best
you
stories there.
You picked some crackers there.
Yeah.
I can see him penning away. He picks
fantastic.
out all the. He picks all the best.
Are you doing the reels and stuff?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that story in mid-Asia was mental.
Yeah. I never thought fucking those countries were Asia.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You just don't think Kazakhstan, all the other styles. You think that's more Russia. I don't think it was embedded into Asia, would you?
Yeah, it is. It's part of Asia, and it's like, I mean, crazy stuff goes on there. You got a place called Turkmenistan as well, which is one of the maddest places. It's like a cross between Disneyland and North Korea. It's like all the buildings are made of marble. The president's just got statues of himself everywhere. It's like crazy area.
Where are you off to next then? Is it you said like the continents and stuff? Are you off to somewhere?
Yeah, so next one will be Argentina.
Yeah.
So in the new year. So just got back from a month in Africa. Again, I mean, there's loads of stories from that one, but that was a month-long cycling and mountain climbing trip. Cycling through Ethiopia, getting rocks and knives thrown at me, and it's non-stop.
You're mad, mate.
Yeah, it's non-stop.
I can
honestly.
see the addiction though.
Yeah.
Like when I'm chatting to you and I'm listening, I'm like, fuck, I can see that because I'm always looking for the next buzz.
Yeah.
It's a different buzz to that. I'm looking for the next thing. That's sort of the next. Give me something. Like, and I'm so far from adventure in terms of. I've got mates of mine are constantly doing like ex-England rugby players, constantly doing North Pole to South Pole. Dodge, come and do this with me, or cycle through it. We're going to the Amazon and we're going through crocodile rivers and we're going to do. I'm like, no, mate. I have fucking zero interest in any of that.
Yeah.
Do you know? Let me just go and lay on the beach somewhere, have a nice long lunch. Like I don't. It's something that's in me that doesn't fancy that sort of stuff. I love adventure.